The Norfolk City Council is now in session. Please stand for a moment of silence, and please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Yes, sir. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Clanton.
Present.
Mrs. Doyle.
Here.
Mrs. Johnson.
Here.
Mr. McGee.
Here.
Mr. Page.
Here.
Mr. Smeagol.
Here.
Mr. Thomas.
Here.
Dr. Alexander.
Here, the motion is to dispense with the reading of the minutes of our previous meeting.
Mr. Clanton.
Aye.
Mrs. Doyle.
Aye.
Mrs. Johnson.
Aye.
Mr. McGee.
Aye.
Mr. Page.
Aye.
Mr. Smeagol.
Aye.
Mr. Thomas.
Aye.
Dr. Alexander.
Aye, Mr. Clerk, please read the resolution certifying the closed meeting.
I have a resolution certifying a closed meeting of the council in accordance with the Virginia provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. Adopt the resolution. Mr. Clanton.
Aye.
Mrs. Doyle.
Aye.
Mrs. Johnson.
Aye.
Mr. McGee.
Aye.
Mr. Page.
Aye.
Mr. Smeagol.
Aye.
Mr. Thomas.
Aye.
Dr. Alexander.
Aye. Good evening and welcome to the Norfolk City Council meeting. Tonight, we begin with public comments on consent and regular agenda items, followed by public hearings. Then the consent agenda, which will be voted on in a block. Following the consent agenda, we will take up regular agenda items, then new business. To address the council, you should have registered to speak with the clerk prior to 3 p.m. When your name is called, please come to the podium, state your name, your home address, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Before we begin, Mr. Clerk, will you please read the rules governing tonight's meeting?
Certainly. City Council rules permit each speaker 3 minutes in total to speak on any and all consent and agenda docket items at each monthly meeting. If in advance of tonight's meeting you registered with the clerk to comment on a public hearing matter, you will also receive an additional 3 minutes on that matter. As you approach the council, you'll notice a timer on the lectern. At the beginning of the 3 minutes, a green light will activate. 2.5 minutes into your remarks, you will notice a yellow light indicating that you have 30 seconds to finish your comments. At the end of 3 minutes, you will see a red light and hear a beep. We ask that you conclude your comments at that time. While speakers have an opportunity to address council on docket matters, all comments should be made in a manner that respects the seriousness of the forum and should not be made in a profane, disruptive, sarcastic, or demeaning fashion. All remarks should be directed to the City Council as a body rather than to any particular member of City Council, staff, or the audience. Comments on an agenda item should be germane to that item. Typically, council members do not respond to public comments at the time they are received. However, a member of staff may be called upon to address the matter or answer questions. A speaker who fails to comply with the basic rules of decorum will be deemed out of order and not allowed to conclude his or her comments. And as a reminder, no sign, placard, poster, or like material which may be carried by hand shall be permitted in the City Council chamber or adjoining areas. When your name is called, please come forward, state your name and address, followed by your remarks. If you have a written statement or supporting materials, please hand it to our clerk prior to starting your remarks on the agenda item.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Speaking on PH1, we'll answer questions if we have questions. Mr. Bateman will speak if questions are needed. PH2, same if questions are needed. Blake will speak. And on C14, Brian Vickery will speak if there are questions. However, on C16, Joshua Waldron, would you like to speak on C16? Okay, thank you. Also on C16, Keith Colo, would you like to speak?
I'm only here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk, PH1.
Hearing one? Certainly, sir. Public hearing one scheduled to stay pursuant to state law on the application of Cover Brewing Company to rezone property located at 9519 and 9523 22nd Bay Street from RC Residential Coastal and Conditional CR Regional Commercial District to CC Community Commercial District. And by a vote of 5-0, Planning Commission recommend approval with one abstention. I have an ordinance to rezone property located at 9519 and 9523 22nd Bay Street from RC Residential Coastal and Conditional CR Regional Commercial District to CC Community Commercial District. Dispense with the charter requirement for reading the ordinance twice and adopt with the effective date. Mr. Clanton.
Aye.
Mrs. Doyle.
Aye.
Mrs. Johnson.
Aye.
Mr. McGee.
Aye.
Mr. Page.
Aye.
Mr. Smigiel.
Aye.
Mr. Thomas.
Aye.
Dr. Alexander.
Aye. PH 2.
Public hearing 2 scheduled this day pursuant to state law on the application of Meonkins for a rezoning from conditional CC Community Commercial and PCO Riverview Pedestrian Commercial Overlay Riverview District to conditional CC Community Commercial and PCO Riverview Pedestrian Commercial Overlay Riverview District, and a conditional use permit to authorize the operation of a kennel on property located at 111 Pennsylvania Avenue, and by a 6-0 vote, Planning Commission recommended approval. I have an ordinance to rezone property located at 111 Pennsylvania Avenue from conditional CC Community Commercial and PCO Riverview Pedestrian Commercial Overlay Riverview District to conditional CC Community Commercial and PCO Riverview Pedestrian Commercial Overlay Riverview District. Dispense with the charter requirement for reading the ordinance twice and adopt with the effective date. Mr. Clanton.
Aye.
Mrs. Doyle.
Aye.
Mrs. Johnson.
Aye.
Mr. McGee.
Aye.
Mr. Page.
Aye.
Mr. Smigiel.
Aye.
Mr. Thomas.
Aye.
Dr. Alexander. I have a
PH
second.
2A.
Certainly, sir. An ordinance granting a conditional use permit to authorize the operation of a kennel on property located at 111 Pennsylvania Avenue as PH 2A. Dispense with the charter requirement for reading the ordinance twice and adopt with the effective date. Mr. Clanton.
Aye.
Mrs. Doyle.
Aye.
Mrs. Johnson.
Aye.
Mr. McGee.
Aye.
Mr. Page.
Aye.
Mr. Smigiel.
Aye.
Mr. Thomas.
Aye.
Dr. Alexander.
Aye. PH 3.
Public hearing 3 scheduled this day pursuant to state law to hear comments on an ordinance approving and authorizing the city manager to execute a facility use and lease agreement with the Virginia Opera Association for the use and lease of certain portions of the Harrison Opera House located at 160 West of Virginia Beach Boulevard. I have an ordinance approving and authorizing the city manager to execute a facility use and lease agreement with Virginia Opera Association, Inc. for the use and lease of certain portions of the Harrison Opera House located at 160 West of Virginia Beach Boulevard. Dispense with the charter requirement for reading the ordinance twice and adopt with the effective date. Mr. Clanton.
Aye.
Mrs. Doyle.
Aye.
Mrs. Johnson.
Aye.
Mr. McGee.
Aye.
Mr. Page.
No.
Mr. Smigiel.
Aye.
Mr. Thomas.
Aye.
Dr. Alexander.
Aye. PH 4.
Public hearing 4 scheduled this day pursuant to state law to hear comments on an ordinance reauthorizing the issuance and sale by the City of Norfolk, Virginia of general obligation notes on a revolving credit line basis. I have an ordinance reauthorizing the issuance and sale by the City of Norfolk, Virginia of general obligation notes on a revolving credit line basis. Dispense with the charter requirement for reading the ordinance twice and adopt with the effective date. Mr. Clanton.
Aye.
Mrs. Doyle.
Aye.
Mrs. Johnson.
Aye.
Mr. McGee.
Aye.
Mr. Page.
Aye.
Mr. Smigiel.
Aye.
Mr. Thomas.
Aye.
Dr. Alexander.
Aye. PH 5.
Public hearing 5 scheduled this day pursuant to state law to hear comments on an ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale of storm water system revenue bonds by the City of Norfolk, Virginia. I have an ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale of storm water system revenue bonds by the City of Norfolk, Virginia. Dispense with the charter requirement for reading the ordinance twice and adopt with the effective date. Mr. Clanton.
Aye.
Mrs. Doyle.
Aye.
Mrs. Johnson.
Aye.
Mr. McGee.
Aye.
Mr. Page.
Aye.
Mr. Smigiel.
Aye.
Mr. Thomas.
Aye.
Dr. Alexander.
Aye. PH 6.
Public hearing 6 scheduled this day pursuant to state law to hear comments on an ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale by the City of Norfolk, Virginia of wastewater system revenue bonds for wastewater improvements. I have an ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale by the City of Norfolk, Virginia of wastewater system revenue bonds for wastewater improvements. Dispense with the charter requirement for reading the ordinance twice and adopt with the effective date. Mr. Clanton.
Aye.
Mrs. Doyle.
Aye.
Mrs. Johnson.
Aye.
Mr. McGee.
Aye.
Mr. Page.
Aye.
Mr. Smigiel.
Aye.
Mr. Thomas.
Aye.
Dr. Alexander.
Aye. PH 7.
Public hearing 7 scheduled this day pursuant to state law to hear comments on an ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale by the City of Norfolk, Virginia of up to $200 million in general obligation bonds for capital improvement projects. I I have an ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale by the City of Norfolk, Virginia of up to $200 million in general obligation bonds for capital improvement program projects. Dispense with the charter requirement for reading the ordinance twice and adopt with the effective date. Mr. Clanton.
Aye.
Mrs. Doyle.
Aye.
Mrs. Johnson.
Aye.
Mr. McGee.
Aye.
Mr. Page.
Aye.
Mr. Smigiel.
Aye.
Mr. Thomas.
Aye.
Dr. Alexander.
Aye. PH 8.
Public hearing 8 scheduled this day pursuant to state law to hear comments on an ordinance approving a lease agreement with Azalea Little League Incorporated and Fleet Park Little League, Inc. for the lease of city-owned property located at 1147 and 1176 Pine Ridge Road. I have an ordinance approving a lease agreement with Azalea Little League Incorporated and Fleet Park Little League, Inc. for the lease of city-owned property located at 1147 and 1176 Pine Ridge Road. Dispense with the charter requirement for reading the ordinance twice and adopt with the effective date. Mr. Clanton.
Aye.
Mrs. Doyle.
Aye.
Mrs. Johnson.
Aye.
Mr. McGee.
Aye.
Mr. Page.
Yes, sir. I just asked rest of council and the city manager to consider in these days where money is getting harder and harder to find, to keep in mind that they're working with some of our younger citizens, some of our children in the city. And I happen to personally know that they need our help a little bit with the maintenance. Traditionally, this agreement has been one where all of the burden of maintenance fell on the Azalea Little League, but they need a little bit of help from us. Thank you. I vote aye.
Thank you. Mr. Smigiel.
Aye.
Mr. Thomas.
Aye.
Dr. Alexander.
Aye. PH 9.
Public hearing 9 scheduled this day pursuant to state law on the application of the City Planning Commission for a zoning ordinance text amendment to create a new section in Article 5 defining development standards for renovations, additions, and site improvements for existing development, to revise and relocate regulations for screening and neighborhood protection, to establish regulations for refuse container placement and screening, to revise other sections to incorporate changes in state law related to manufactured homes, minimum requirements for the residential parking requirements, and temporary support structures for small cell facilities, and to correct clerical errors. And by a 6-0 vote, Planning Commission recommends approval. I have an ordinance to amend Articles 3, 4, and 5 of the Norfolk zoning ordinance so as to define development standards for renovations, additions, and site improvements for existing development, to delete, revise, and relocate regulations for screening and neighborhood protection, to establish regulations for refuse container placement and screening, and to correct clerical errors, and dispense with the charter requirement for reading the ordinance twice and adopt with the effective date. Mr. Clanton.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to commend Mr. Hahn and his team in their efforts to continue to move forward on these updates. So I vote aye.
Thank you. Mrs. Doyle?
Aye.
Mrs. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. McGee?
Aye.
Mr. Page?
Aye.
Mr. Smigiel,
Aye.
Mr. Thomas?
Aye.
Dr. Alexander.
Aye. PH 9A.
Public hearing 9A is an ordinance to amend sections of the Norfolk zoning ordinance so as to incorporate changes in state law related to manufactured homes, minimum requirements for residential parking, and temporary support structures for small cell facilities. Dispense with the charter requirement for reading the ordinance twice and adopt with the effective date. Mr. Clanton.
Aye.
Mrs. Doyle.
Aye.
Mrs. Johnson.
Excuse me. Aye.
Thank you. Mr. McGee.
Aye.
Mr. Page.
Aye.
Mr. Smigiel,
Aye.
Mr. Thomas.
Aye.
Dr. Alexander.
Aye. Mr. Clerk, consent agenda will be considered in a block unless otherwise noted.
Approve the consent agenda, dispense with the charter requirement for reading the ordinances twice and adopt with the effective dates. Mr. Clanton.
Aye.
Mrs. Doyle.
Aye.
Mrs. Johnson.
Aye.
Mr. McGee.
Aye.
Mr. Page.
Aye.
Mr. Smigiel,
Aye.
Mr. Thomas.
Aye.
Dr. Alexander.
Mr. Clerk, part 1.
Part 1 is an ordinance granting a conditional use permit to authorize a short-term rental unit homestay on property located at 1432 Narcova Avenue, and by a vote of 6-0, Planning Commission recommended approval. Dispense with the charter requirement for reading the ordinance twice and adopt with the effective date. Mr. Clanton.
Aye.
Mrs. Doyle.
Aye.
Mrs. Johnson.
Aye.
Mr. McGee.
Aye.
Mr. Page.
Aye.
Mr. Smigiel,
Aye.
Mr. Thomas.
Aye.
Dr. Alexander.
Aye. Part 2.
Part 2 is an ordinance amending the FY 2027 Annual Appropriations Ordinance Number 50363 to appropriate $963,678 from the Virginia Department of Transportation for the 25th Street Sidewalk Extension Project UPC 129602, providing $240,920 as the local share and amending the FY 2027 budget consistent with the same. Dispense with the charter requirement for reading the ordinance twice and adopt with the effective date. Mr. Clanton.
Aye. Aye.
Mrs. Doyle.
Aye.
Mrs. Johnson.
Aye.
Mr. McGee.
Aye.
Mr. Page.
Aye.
Mr. Smigiel.
Aye.
Mr. Thomas.
Aye.
Dr. Alexander.
Aye. R3.
R3 is an ordinance amending the FY 2027 annual appropriations ordinance number 50363 to appropriate $2,070,768 from the Virginia Department of Transportation for Tidewater Drive Sidewalks Phase 1 Project UPC 129597, providing $517,692 as the local share and amending the FY 2027 budget consistent with the same. Dispense with the charter requirement for reading the ordinance twice and adopt with the effective date. Mr. Clanton.
Aye.
Mrs. Doyle.
Aye.
Mrs. Johnson.
I just want to say thank you for the improvements on Tidewater Drive, the sidewalks. This will truly benefit my senior citizens in the living apartments of Petra and Cottage Bridge. I vote aye.
Thank you. Mr. McGee.
Aye.
Mr. Page.
Aye.
Mr. Smigiel.
Aye.
Mr. Thomas.
Aye.
Dr. Alexander.
Aye. R4.
R4 is an ordinance amending the FY 2027 annual appropriations ordinance number 50363 to appropriate $1,920,689 from the Virginia Department of Transportation for Tidewater Drive Sidewalks Phase 2 Project UPC 129594, providing $480,172 as the local share and amending the FY 2027 budget consisting with the same. Dispense with the charter requirement for reading the ordinance twice and adopt with the effective date. Mr. Clanton.
Aye.
Mrs. Doyle.
Aye.
Mrs. Johnson.
Aye.
Mr. McGee.
Aye.
Mr. Page.
Aye.
Mr. Smigiel.
Aye.
Mr. Thomas.
Aye.
Dr. Alexander.
Aye. R5.
R5 is an ordinance amending Section 14 UU of the FY 2027 Annual Appropriations Ordinance Number 50363 regarding Virginia Department of Transportation Project UPC 119276 to change the grant program source of funds and amending the FY 2027 budget consistent with the same. Dispense with the charter requirement for reading the ordinance twice and adopt with the effective date. Mr. Clanton.
Aye.
Mrs. Doyle.
Aye.
Mrs. Johnson.
Aye.
Mr. McGee.
Aye.
Mr. Page.
Aye.
Mr. Smigiel.
Aye.
Mr. Thomas.
Aye.
Dr. Alexander.
Aye. R6.
R6 is an ordinance amending the FY 2027 Annual Appropriations Ordinance Number 50363 to appropriate an additional $30,248 in grant funds from the Virginia Crisis Intervention Team Coalition to support the Norfolk Crisis Intervention Team Program and amending the FY 2027 budget consistent with the same. Dispense with the charter requirement for reading the ordinance twice and adopt with the effective date. Mr. Clanton.
Aye.
Mrs. Doyle.
Aye.
Mrs. Johnson.
Aye.
Mr. McGee.
Aye.
Mr. Page.
Aye.
Mr. Smigiel.
Aye.
Mr. Thomas.
Aye.
Dr. Alexander.
Aye. R7.
R7 is an ordinance amending Section 14C of the FY 2027 Annual Appropriations Ordinance Number 50363 to appropriate a total of $75,000 from the Virginia Department of Criminal Justice Services for one paralegal and one part-time intake advocate for the Norfolk Commonwealth Attorney's Office, pursuant to the grant terms and conditions, and amending the FY 2027 budget consistent with the same. Dispense with the charter requirement for reading the ordinance twice and adopt with the effective date. Mr. Clanton.
Aye.
Mrs. Doyle.
Aye.
Mrs. Johnson.
Aye.
Mr. McGee.
Aye.
Mr. Page.
Aye.
Mr. Smigiel.
Aye.
Mr. Thomas.
Aye.
Dr. Alexander.
Aye. R8.
R8 is an ordinance amending Section 1 of the FY 2027 Annual Appropriations Ordinance Number 50363 to appropriate funds to provide one-time 2% bonuses for social services employees and juvenile detention center employees and amending the FY 2027 budget consistent with the same. Dispense with the charter requirement for reading the ordinance twice and adopt with the effective date. Mr. Clanton.
Aye.
Mrs. Doyle.
Aye.
Mrs. Johnson.
Aye.
Mr. McGee.
Aye.
Mr. Page.
Aye.
Mr. Smigiel.
Aye.
Mr. Thomas.
Aye.
Dr. Alexander.
Aye. R9.
R9 is an ordinance approving and authorizing the city manager to execute a cooperation agreement by and between the City of Norfolk and the Economic Development Authority of the City of Norfolk, the authority to enable the authority to complete site readiness testing at property owned by the City of Norfolk and known as Military Circle. Dispense with the charter requirement for reading the ordinance twice and adopt with the effective date. Mr. Clanton.
Aye.
Mrs. Doyle.
Aye.
Mrs. Johnson.
Aye.
Mr. McGee.
Aye.
Mr. Page.
Aye.
Mr. Smigiel.
Aye.
Mr. Thomas.
Aye.
Dr. Alexander.
Aye. R10.
R10 is the second ordinance amending and reordaining the fiscal year 2027 compensation plan ordinance and exhibits ordinance number 50415 effective July 1, 2026, to amend its section 2 in its entirety so as to increase the minimum annual salaries of family services worker 1 positions to $55,000, to amend its Exhibit 3 in its entirety so as to add a new position title and change the job codes, title names, and grades associated with multiple existing position titles, to amend its Exhibit 5 in its entirety so as to remove pay steps from a portion of its fire rescue plan and to amend its Exhibit 7 in its entirety so as to add a position title with job code and adjust various grades and ranges within its Commonwealth's attorney pay plan. Dispense with the charter requirement for reading the ordinance twice, adopt with the effective date. Mr. Clanton.
Aye.
Mrs. Doyle.
Aye.
Mrs. Johnson.
Aye.
Mr. McGee.
Aye.
Mr. Page.
Aye.
Mr. Smigiel.
Aye.
Mr. Thomas.
Aye.
Dr. Alexander.
Aye.
That's all I have, sir.
All right. New business, public comment. Susan Matusik. Susan Matusik. Bridget Toole. Bridget Toole would be followed by Antoinette Keenan.
Good evening, distinguished ladies and gentlemen.
Good evening.
Of the Norfolk City Council. I signed up, first of all, my name is Bridget Toole, and I am the matriarch of criminal justice reform since 1994. I live in zip code 23502. And I'm here to highlight on aspects of public corruption, which is causing a massive homelessness, not just within the city, of course, everywhere. And one of the things that I found is that the people who are most victim of homelessness are those, number one, who are African American. Number two, are educationally challenged. So we're locked in, as far as how much we can make and things of that nature, all right? So, I'm sorry, I'm getting a senior moment here. So I found that with a lot of our educationally challenged African Americans, when it comes to renting, and they have an issue with their rental unit that's not getting fixed by the landlords, getting ignored by the landlords when they complain, a lot of us have a tendency of not wanting to pay our rent instead of going to the courts and doing a tenant's assertion and putting the money in escrow. So a lot of educationally challenged renters end up in homelessness due to ignorance. And one of the things that I'm concerned about is that because of the massive homeless situation, who is responsible? What level of government, is it local or state, that could declare a state of emergency dealing with homelessness? Because homelessness, even if it's just affecting a economic group of people or one ethnic group, that's genocide. Nobody's supposed to sleep outside. Who's supposed to call a state of emergency to enact whatever funding, whether it's public or private, that may be available so that we can get people off the streets at night? Thank you for taking time out to hearing my concerns.
Thank you. Antoinette? Antoinette will be followed by Dennis Waterling.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, and City Council, all due respect. I don't know all of you names and things of sort. I'm going to hit bullet points because of lack of timing. I am a resident of Portsmouth. I live at 56 Gregory Court in Portsmouth, where I am a homeowner. I'm coming on behalf of myself and maybe even in perhaps of one of you guys, because a lot of people do not follow and know who you guys are, so you might find yourself in this predicament. I woke up in the hospital at Norfolk General Hospital. This has been going on for almost 2 years now, and I have not gotten any resolution. I have gone to the Norfolk Police Department. They refuse to take the report. They say that I need to go to the police department at the hospital. I went to the hospital. They made me write up the report 3 times. I went to patient advocate. They've been telling me, give us a week, give me a month, give me 2 weeks, give me 3 weeks, we're gonna get back in contact with you. I don't think that would happen to you here. I don't think that would happen to you. Yes, that did happen to you. Then I said to them, well, it happened in the hallway, so it should be on camera. The police officers told me, oh, our cameras in our hospital's not working. So finally, the patient advocate lady said, so it seemed like to me, you're not going to give this up, Miss Kennan. And I said, no, I'm not. And so she said, okay. So a few days later, I received a letter at my house stating that a former employee at the hospital stole my records, and my records are missing from the hospital. So she would get back in contact with me. So I left it alone, and I'm at a crossroad now. I woke up in ICU. First of all, I'm just shy of 60. I'm standing before you, a double transplant patient, wherein I was on machines for 20 years, waiting for organs. I woke up in ICU tied to the bed for days, where I was left. Finally, after cheeking my medicine and spitting it out, I began to wake up. When I subsequently said to them, when am I gonna leave? Because I was tired of being tied to the bed. So they said, you're gonna go to step down. I went to step down the next day. And when I got to step down, I said to the nurse, I said, may I use the bathroom? She's, while hearing over the loudspeaker, there's a fire in the morgue, there's a fire in the morgue. So I said, okay, it's important. So, I'm sorry. So anyway, subsequently, I got 5 broken bones in my foot, a torn rotator cuff, and contusion to the back of my head, sent to another hospital, and they put me in the hospital.
Ms. Kenny, thank you. Your time has expired, and I hope that you get resolution to your concerns with Centera, okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there any way that anybody could tell me what do I need to do?
I believe someone is listening, and someone will be in contact with you. If your number is, yeah, well, I think we have your number. Yeah, we have your number. We'll make sure that we pass it to the.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time, and I'm sorry for going over time. I just needed some reciprocity.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. Dennis, it's followed by Melissa Corrigan.
My name is Dennis Wolterding. I live at 2220 Pretty Lake Ave. Good evening, Mayor and members of City Council. I'm here tonight asking immediate assistance with a problem surrounding East Beach Farmers Market. Approximately 6 months every year, residents in my neighborhood deal with a serious traffic, parking, littering, property access problem every Saturday. Let it be clear, I'm not against the farmers market, but I am against a lack of traffic control, parking enforcement, and accountability that comes with it. Every Saturday, vehicles block our driveways, sidewalks, walkways, mailboxes. People park on the grass, on residents, and in the park. Near the fire hydrants, the stop signs clearly mark no parking areas. Cars park on both sides of the narrow resident streets, while traffic slowly moves in both directions, causing congestion. There have been times when my son, my neighbors, and myself have tried to get in and out of our driveways, and it's taken up to 20 to 30 minutes. I get up every Saturday now at 6 a.m. just to put out cones around my driveway, walkway, mailbox, and to protect access to my own property. When I politely ask people not to block my property, I've been cursed at given the middle finger, told to get a life. Before I installed a small fence around the front of my property, because I have a corner lot, people walked directly through my lawn, and their dogs did their business there, and they would not pick it up. After the market is ended, trash is left throughout our neighborhood, which leaves all the residents picking up trash. After all the residents picking up trash because we love where we live. I served 30 years in the United States Marine Corps. I understand patience, sacrifice, but I should not have to fight every Saturday for basic rights of peaceable and enjoyment and access to my home. I respectfully ask City Council to take immediate action, and I ask the city to seriously consider whether the market should be moved to a larger location with adequate parking. The market officially begins at 9, but at 8:15, the problem really starts. A community event should not come at the expense of the people that live in that community. We are not asking for special treatment. We are asking for enforcement of the laws and access to our homes, respect for our property, and the ability to peacefully enjoy our neighborhood. Please help us, and please act now. Thank you for hearing my concerns. God bless America, God bless you, and God bless the people of the city of Norfolk.
Thank you, sir. Melissa Corrigan? Melissa? Melissa? No, okay. Tiara Lassiter? Tiara will be followed by Alton Robinson.
Good evening,
Evening.
Council and Mayor. So the community issue that I would like to discuss would be the flooding in Norfolk, Virginia. So flooding in Norfolk, Virginia has experienced tidal and major historical flooding for over a century. I'm aware that the city is currently beneath the sea level. I'm aware that no one can control the weather. However, rain should not shut the city down. In Norfolk, we have experienced hurricanes, tropical storms, tidal flooding, flash floods, and all of these things. And the infrastructure negligence, the raggedy streets, the potholes, and most recently the sinkholes is unacceptable. So I understand that the focus may be on luxury housing and building all of the things, but what good is it buying a house in Norfolk when you can't access the street due to the flooding and the rain? So this problem did not start with you, but I'm praying and hoping that it ends with you. Meaning, I would like some type of resolution for all of this excessive flooding. And it's not just when we have a flash flood or a tidal wave, it's every single time it rains. So, with that being said, citizens suffer great loss every time it rains. For example, car loss, cars flooding out, homes receive water damages due to water seeping in and sometimes flooding basements and other parts of the homes. People experience increased insurance rates. So your insurance is going up. Certain companies have not been paying out if you flood your car in this particular city due to the bad flooding, or they're requiring specifically for you to have flood insurance for your car, so it's costing us more money. And for those whose cars did get flooded out, the towing fees that come along with that. So the citizens should not suffer for the weather. I feel like the city can assist residents by installing high flood signs, number one. Why do we not have signs all around here telling us where the floods are the worst? Like seeing people, cars flow almost to the top of those underpasses, out of line. We can build a flood wall, flood gates. We can clean and repair the gutters. We can clean and repair the water lines. So that way, if we do experience flooding, it won't necessarily be that bad. We can also implement a safety plan, because more importantly,
if something was to occur and we had to emergency evacuate, how many of us are realistically going to make it out? Is endangering every single person within the city. And I don't want to die here because we couldn't get out because we had a hurricane and everybody had to evacuate. And the majority of the streets are flooded. So I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one. I know I'm not the only person who see all of the boating and the swimming and the canoeing and the jet skiing. It's like, what in the world? Thank you.
Thank you. Alton Robinson. Alton will be followed by Kevin Latham.
Good evening, Council,
Good evening.
Mayor, City Manager. For 17 years, I've been doing the Park Place Community Festival. And for 17 years, I've been coming to this council, more than 17 years. I've seen 2 mayors, 2 clerks, 2 city attorneys, 6 city managers. And you know, this one here, the mayor, I want to thank you for your support of our reunion. And I really have to thank the city manager. Pat, you told me one time when I came down here doing the closing of the park, and I said, you seen the crime, and you should have did something about it. And then you turned right around and say, I'm going to support your event. And you was a man of your word. It's nothing like being a man of your word in my book. And I just want to say thank you very much. And I have an initiative I want to bring to the city, which I will be bringing to the city, a little more investigation on it to change the mindset of our young people, to also build houses in our community, because, see, something's going to happen. Something is going to happen in our city. And we're not going to be prepared for it. But I'm bringing this message here so that we can prepare for it. And I hope that you all will consider the initiatives they're going to bring, because we have to start training our young people to survive and give them the skills to survive so they can be living in the same way, the same type of housing that you all are living in. I don't think nobody on that council lives in a regular house. I know all your houses are well kept, and you're living wonderfully. And I want to see all the people in the city live, if you can't live exactly as you are, but look close enough so that somebody can say, the City of Norfolk has done something to change the lives of everybody in the city. Because we can make Norfolk great again. I know they're trying to make America great again, but we can make Norfolk great again. And I believe that you guys can do it. You know why? Because you all are great people. You have great minds, great ideas. Might be a little tight on the money, and they don't disperse it equally, but we'll work on that, right? My man. God bless you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you, Alton. Kevin Latham. It's Kevin Latham. Dolores Brown Tellish. Dolores Brown. Samuel Wallace. Samuel Wallace will be followed by Alex O'Loughlin.
Good evening, councilors. I'm Till. I live at 888 Magazine Lane. Last week, U.S. House of Representatives Congressman Bobby Scott held a town hall in this very room. I attended and asked him what he was doing to protect our privacy and protect us from repression by our own government. He told me not enough and asserted that flock cameras caused a lot of privacy problems, but called flock a state-by-state issue. The state of Virginia has delegated that authority to the municipalities of Virginia. And so here I stand in front of you again, asking you to cancel the city's contract with Flock and stop spending our money on this, as I have done for the past 5 months. You claim that you've heard me, but you have, so far as I can tell, taken no initiative on this topic whatsoever. In fact, the mayor has apparently been quoted in the press and on TV as saying What do you want me to do? Your job, sir. I want you to do your job. It's not my job to initiate review of this system. It's not my job to gather feedback from your constituents. It's not my job to oversee the process by which the administration reconsiders the contract. It's not my job to push for change, even though I have been doing all of those things for you for 5 months now, uncompensated. That's still your job. We pay you to do that. Do your job. This is not a campaign. We are not gaming the system. I am not a lobbyist. DFLOC is not an organization. We are concerned taxpayers who live and work in the area, activating other concerned citizens to engage with you so that you can do your jobs. So far, with few exceptions, we have met overwhelming resistance to that. But Mr. Scott said to me, keep it up. Keep the pressure on. And so that's what I intend to do until you take this as seriously as it deserves to be taken. You signed this contract without our knowledge or consent. The only reasonable option, given the overwhelming disapproval of your constituents on both sides of the aisle, is to follow the example of 132 other municipalities across the country, including Henry County, Virginia, Floyd County, Virginia, Elkton, Virginia, and Harrisonburg, Virginia, and cancel the contract and remove the cameras. That is the bare minimum. Furthermore, I urge you to put a policy in place that Norfolk will not approve or install ALPRs in city limits without a referendum. You make the rules, councilors. Do what you need to do to get this done, or you will keep hearing from us. Thank you.
Thank you. Alex? Alex is followed by Tyler Gupta.
Good evening, Council. My name's Alex L. Lachlan. I was born and raised in Norfolk, and I currently live in Park Place. Do y'all remember Pokemon Go? It was this mobile app that came out in like 2016. It was a game where you could walk around with your camera or your phone and capture little cartoon monsters. Millions of people downloaded it, millions of people played it. But what most people didn't know is that while they were trying to catch a Pikachu in their kitchen, a company called Niantic, they were using that phone's camera feed for something else. Niantic used the data from the cameras that you pointed into your park, into your school, into your streets, into your stores, even into your home, and they build what they called a spatial AI model, and they licensed the result as a commercial product worth billions of dollars. But Pokemon Go wasn't a fluke. This is a playbook. You offer a service people want, whether that's a game, a search engine, a social network, public safety tool. You use that service to collect data at scale. You feed that into an AI, and then you move from detailing what people do now to predicting what they'll do in the future. You know, Facebook offered a social connection, and they ended up in the business of shaping elections. Amazon gave you 2-day shipping, and they built a prediction engine so precise that they literally patented the ability to ship products to your neighborhood 2 weeks before you ordered them. They knew you were going to order it. The service is always the front door, while the data is always the actual business. So where does Flock safety fit, right? Flock's data is your movement, where you go, when you go, how often, who you go with, what patterns you keep, who you travel alongside, every trip to work, doctor, school, your kid's school, your church. All this gets logged, processed, and fed into AI models that their CEO confirmed are retrained every week. Flock's data is Norfolk's data, forever under an irrevocable worldwide license. The service they're selling is public safety. The business they're building is prediction. And the end point of that business, it's where it always goes, is influence, and that's the mark of an AI company. The data surveillance economy always expands. It finds a new way to collect new data and new ways to turn the public into a product. So what's next? Audio detection? Flock already sells it. Drones? Flock sells those too. The thing about surveillance is every time we normalize one layer, the next one gets easier to sell. So this is the pattern every time. You collect, you process, you predict. Collect movement, process it into behavior, predict what you're going to do next, and then they sell that prediction to whoever will pay. So you sign a contract with a company that holds a perpetual, irrevocable, worldwide license to data about where every Norfolk resident goes. So there's no version of that contract that you can fix. There's no amendment that makes it acceptable, so we're really asking you to cancel it. Thank you.
Thank you. Tyler? Tyler Gupta? Henry Reed?
Good evening, councilors.
Good evening.
My name is Henry. I own a home in Ward 2 of Norfolk. Today, I want to talk about a vision I have for this city. This city is one of the oldest in American history, with a lot of bruises and bumps made along the way. And as a newer resident, I want to be part of those bruises and bumps. I want to be the reason why we don't have to worry about those bruises and bumps any longer. Flock cameras will not help us get past these bruises and bumps. These flock cameras are a voyeuristic look into the daily lives of every single citizen that you are charged with protecting. I want a world where kids can go to the playgrounds without fear that their picture is going to be taken without their consent. I want a world where people can drive down the roads without fear that an AI camera is going to make sure that they go to jail for a crime they didn't commit. I want a city that isn't afraid of having an ex-boyfriend gain access to an overreach surveillance system that they can track their every move. Those problems might not be happening today in Norfolk, but they are happening nationwide with flock cameras. It is only a matter of time before it happens in our own backyard. Thank you for your time, councilors.
Thank you. Gabe Harrell? Gabe Harrell?
Hello, council. So I want to start out that Mr. Alton's comment about something happening in this city is absolutely true. We're already seeing it. We're seeing a 1 in 60-year event take place 3 times in a month. On August 22nd, I biked downtown, and there had been a storm earlier that day. I heard crickets, and if you know anything about the environment, you'll know that that's good. Normally, you'll also hear birds. But on August 22nd, I didn't hear any birds. If you know anything about the environment, you'll know that that's not good. Earlier that day, I received a message about the likelihood of flooding. It joined the many messages that I've received this summer from the city about heat advisories, severe storm warnings, and flash flood warnings. I'm happy to see PH5 for stormwater bonds, PH6 wastewater improvements, C12 air quality monitoring on the docket. And based on what I've seen and heard of the disproportionate impact of stormwater management in marginalized areas, I want to state that it's critical that these provisions be equitably distributed, not equally, equitably. So that means prioritizing drainage for areas like Young, Calvert, Tidewater Gardens, which no longer exists and is now a field. Not simply replacing half the housing units with no yards and turning the rest of them into a park. That's not equitable. If you know anything about the environment, and if you know anything about preserving community, you'll know that not only is it not equitable, it's bad. Ultimately, what's required by the City of Norfolk is radical climate action. Norfolk does not bear the full responsibility of climate change. I know that. That would be insane. But what it can do is stop cutting down trees. What it can do is stop paving over the ground. What it can do is use semi-permeable surfaces like are being used in the Stockley Garden project to replace pavement. It's a good example of employing a technology that's been widely known to help with flooding for a very long time. It's not a good example of equitable action, as currently Calvert Park residents have to walk through silt-covered sidewalks to get home every time it rains. But the thing is, there is enough money for Stockley and Calvert to have nice things. There is enough money. There's enough money and resources to help the homeless, too. It's just that it's in the $430,000 flock camera subscription, the Vacant to Vibrant initiative, and the Sale 250 budget, and probably in some of your salaries. I want to note, for the woman asking for help from Centera, all I can say is maybe next time the vice president of marketing from Centera can speak up.